Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we are live. Davy Gallagher is here, and it's yet another episode in our That's Total Shite series. Tonight's victim, the 1995 album from Duran Duran, Thank You. This is a covers album. This record didn't get good reviews back in the day. Probably not going to get a good review here. But Davy and I are here to take a look, so without any further ado, let's get started.
Crank up those headphones. It's time for Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and here we look at Davey. You're not used to that new intro? Come on, man.
Welcome to Rock Warehouse.
Things are happening. We're here in the warehouse.
Yeah.
But Davy Gallagher is here. We are looking at Duran Duran's 1995 album, Thank You. This is a covers album. Yeah, it's a covers album. I mean, think about it. This is 1995. What, 1990? What year? Let's see. 1982 was Rio, and look how far we've come after Rio. But anyway, Davy's here. We're going to talk about it. Davy, how are you? It's nice to see you again. You ready to talk Duran Duran?
No, I'm not. Good night, then.
Good night. Well, we covered that, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, no, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me back. Been a hot minute. Busy schedules and all that, but here we are.
And here we are.
Isn't it wonderful to talk about Thank You by Duran Duran?
Well, yes. It's just either this was, I don't know how to really... Well, you know why they put this out, Davey, for one? What was this? Do you know the story behind it? Is this like a cash grab? Had Duran Duran run out of ideas by this point? Because if you look at major works, if you look at the first album, which is brilliant, you look at Rio, which is brilliant, the Tiger record, that's not too bad.
Well, music, especially British music, so different at that point. But we should reestablish the premise because it's been a little while since we've done one of these.
Yeah, go ahead.
We don't want to punch down, so we always try and find an album by a major act who can afford a little bit of a slagging. So Duran Duran can take one little bit of a kicking. So this is their 1995 covers record, which is right at the height of Britpop at home, and it couldn't be more out of step with what was happening. And it really feels like a band who have no idea how to reconcile the unexpectedly massive success that they just come off with self-titled / The Wedding album in 93, I want to say. And the big hit with Ordinary World. So they have that, and then quick turnaround into this, where I read a couple of their interviews, and we want to pay tribute to the inspirations, and we'll go into it. Some of it, I'm not really sure that holds water, but yeah, I think that pretty much sets it up. That was their excuse anyway. It's just it's a love letter. It's a thank you, literally. We just want to acknowledge the debt that we owe Public Enemy.
Yeah, but I do want to jump onto what you said. I love Duran Duran, and like Davey said, they can afford. I mean, we're having a little fun with this. Not every band can be XTC and every album is great. I think Rio is a brilliant record. Brilliant. Probably my favorite album of the 80s. But look how far we've come in 1995. Like Davey said, yeah, this is a love letter. But how does this thing hold up? It got crappy reviews back in 1995. Yes. Q Magazine, for whatever you want to think, in 2006, Q declared this the worst album of all time. I'm sure there are way more worse records, probably the Shags or something like that, but this is what they said. All Music gave it a 1.5 star. Take all these for a grain of salt, but Rolling Stone gave it 2 stars. Spin gave it a 2 out of 10. For the most part, people are giving this a 2 out of 5 or 2 out of 10 review. I'm just saying, it's not a very popular record.
So yeah, I mean the big defenses from people, because Duran do have a fan base who, yeah, a lot of them will admit that this was just misguided, but there are a lot of people who also defend this record as some kind of artistic statement. Which, hey, anything is an artistic statement if you want it to be. But they'll say, oh well, it's not trying to compete with the original versions. It's just a tribute after all. And you think, well, you don't get a discount for that. So it's not as if you get them half price because they're not trying very hard. Or they'll say, well, it helped me discover these great acts, so it's good for that. And you think, well, Charles Manson helped people discover Helter Skelter. That doesn't make the Manson murders worthwhile, does it? And people will say, well, it did go gold. You can't deny that. And you think, yeah, but the Wedding album went platinum. So this is just on the coattails of that. So really, it just shows that. And then the next album, That's a Land, barely charted at all. It was in the hundreds or something. So this flopped so bad that the next album sold about 19 copies. So I think all the defenses really don't hold up. I mean, John quits the band straight away, hated the album, quit the band. And even the influences, as we'll go into as we go through the tracks, well, there's, to me, the biggest influence that they cannot deny. It's all over the music and it's all over Simon singing. Why is there no Roxy music on this? Where's the Roxy? Surely they would be number one with a bullet if you had to guess who would be their biggest inspiration.
I would agree. Yeah.
There's no Roxy music on this at all. So to me, it's not just we're paying tribute to acts that inspired us. It's we want to pay tribute to acts that it looks cool if we pay tribute to them. So they're trying to capture a few different scenes. They're covering Iggy Pop because Iggy Pop was cool again at this point. Very much zeitgeisty kind of stuff, and I don't think it's very true at all. Because Roxy were a bit passé in '95. They had nothing going on. Brian Ferry was very uncool. So I think this isn't a true reflection of what their actual influences, and I think it's quite disingenuous.
What do you think? This was just, I don't know. They must not have known what to do. I just see this as a cash grab. I don't think it. I don't know. It's a tough listen. I'll give you that.
What could they have done in 1995 at the height of Britpop when your biggest bands are Oasis, Blur, Suede, Pulp, Supergrass? They're completely out of step with that kind of scene. But it's not as if those kind of acts completely annihilated 80s music. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark had a massive hit just shortly after this with Walking in the Milky Way. Yeah. So if they can do it, change up a little bit, become a little bit more current, but you don't do that by making these tepid and then bizarre choices in terms of cover songs. Mm-hmm. So I think we should probably just go into the actual tracks.
Yeah, we can do that. Brian McFadden says the album sounds extremely dated. Immediately sounds 1990. It was recorded from 91 to 95, says.
Fair comment. I love a lot of that period of music. Kind of when I grew up with music, really. So a lot of things that might sound dated to some just sound nostalgic to me. But absolutely, Brian's right. This sounds dated even when you consider 1995. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a covers EP from 1993 or something. Essentially, it's the kind of thing you can imagine a fan club release to be, that was tossed off. Not a major release from a band following up a platinum album. But should we jump in on?
Yeah, we can jump in.
So
all right, go ahead.
We kick things off with White Lines by Millie Mel from Grandmaster Flash, and people who defend this again, and there are some bizarrely, say, well, this is a good example of how to fuse rap and how to fuse rock on top of it. No, Walk This Way with Run DMC and Aerosmith was a good example of how to do that. This was years later, and it had already been done. It's not as if this is breaking any kind of ground. Essentially, it loses everything that's cool about that original, which is that wonderful bass line. I mean, that original was all about that bass line. And this completely buries it with compressed guitars from Warren Cucurullo, who I think is the worst thing on here. Warren is consistently bad on this record. He sounds atrocious. He's badly produced, but everything he's playing is dull anyway. It takes away the simplicity of the original and turns it into generic kind of hip. And you think, what? You're not doing anything original here by adding on hip hop here. And then some people will say, oh, well, at least they got the original. You know, they got Mel back to do it. And Grandmaster Flash is on it. And you think, yeah, but that's because Simon can't rap. The bits that Simon does in this are absolutely awful. So they had to get somebody else. Mm-hmm. So from that regards, at least they got somebody who can rap because it's their bloody song. But at the same time, it reminded me of what's called again, Stars and Stripes Volume 1 by the Beach Boys, where the Beach Boys got country artists in to do Beach Boys songs, and then they did backing vocals on their own songs. Mm-hmm. So the country artists just essentially were doing the Beach Boys song, and you think, well, what is this? Why am I listening to it? And that's very much what I'm thinking here. Why isn't this just a Grandmaster Flash and Mel and Mel redux? The Duran part is very unimportant here. And again, it completely loses the magic of the original, which is one of the great bass songs of all time. Speaking of which.
Well, I'm just saying, if you're looking for something that sounds like, I don't know, I'm old. When I think of Duran Duran, I think of a certain sound. This does not sound like a Duran Duran album to me. It just sounds like a demonstration on audio production, and it's not good.
Yeah.
It's a product of its time. It has nothing to do with Duran Duran as far as I'm concerned, you know.
No, and I think at a time where British music was coming into its own again, as being original, doing a covers album in general was just a stupid idea. Just they might as well have said, we've got absolutely nothing in the tank, but we know we have to get something pumped out. Just a bizarre move in general. Even if it was a good one, it would just be a bizarre move at this point where original music in the UK was brilliant and selling by the barrel load. But I mean, I Want to Take You Higher, obviously Sly Stone. Once again, you have got one of the great bass tracks, Larry Graham's bass from the original, of course.
Yeah.
And in here, his bass is being done by Warren playing this flat guitar line. It's not done on the bass at all. So what's the point? You've just turned it into a generic guitar track. Warren Cucurullo in the 70s, and was it up until the
Well, he was in Missing Persons in the 80s.
Well, it was in Frank Zappa's band.
Right, he was in Zappa's band.
But Zappa would have kicked him out if he'd have heard him playing anything like this. I mean, it's completely bland.
Zappa would have lost his mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nothing. It's tepid. It's lettuce. You know, it's like a lettuce sandwich. There's nothing to it. You know, it's just water. It's just water. It's super compressed. The drumming is clunky as hell. We've got guys on this. Terry Bozzio's on this, to talk about another Zappa connection. Terry Bozzio's on this bloody record. Yeah. Why? Because you can't hear it. Nothing on here is drummed well, is played well on the guitar. Nothing on here is good musically. And then Simon singing Sylvester Sly songs is just a bad idea in general, because he does not have the vocal range. It's not a good fit. Oh. So they put all sorts of filters on Simon's voice, and that original "Wanna Take You Higher" is brilliant. So to turn that into something so bloody cracker, so honky, it's an insult to Sly Stone.
It is an insult.
Really,
yes.
to take all the funk out of it. It sounds almost like they've heard you two doing Mysterious Ways and went, "Oh, we should do something like that. That's good. We should do something like that, but we can't write that, so let's just pick a song that we know and just copy that." And they've got no talent at doing funk at all. They've got no business doing funk. And I'm all for pushing yourself and trying new things, but I'm also for, okay, that's probably not for us. Maybe we shouldn't release it on our major record deal.
Well, I think Duran Duran could pull off funk. Obviously, there's some, John Taylor could play the bass lines, I think. If you look at that early stuff, Planet Earth, it's kind of funky, but I just think this is poorly executed.
But
this is the problem.
That's really the point, is that we're talking about Duran Duran circa 1995 here. We're not talking about Duran Duran.
No, it's hard for me to get. It's hard for me to get over it, Davey.
Well, it's obviously hard for them as well, because this is a midlife crisis of a record, really, isn't it? It's just them throwing everything against the wall. Perfect Day. I mean,
this is the only. I know you're shaking your head, but this is the only song on the record that I can really listen to and not go, I don't want to go vomit in the corner of the room.
Well, Simon's voice on it has got reverb and filters all over it that just render it so anemic, so flat. And technically, he's a better singer than Lou Reed.
Oh, well, oh, yeah, well, yeah.
This is a song about heroin addiction. It's a personal song. And this just comes off as a karaoke. It's just karaoke. It's nothing. There's no feeling. There's no pain. I mean, there's a little bit of synth stuff in it that separates it from the original, but there's absolutely nothing on here. I mean, 2 of the 3 songs so far, White Lines and this, have been about drug addiction. But it feels like the band they don't even know that. They just like the music.
I don't know. Maybe someone just submitted these songs and maybe it was out of their hands. I don't know.
No, I doubt it. After coming off a platinum record, I think they could probably do it. I think this is evidence they could do what they wanted at this point.
Okay.
But I mean, Perfect Day is just, what are you doing, guys? I mean, but then you're right. That is brilliant compared to the absolute. It's horrendous thing that we're about to hear, which is Watching the Detectives, where they may as well go around to Elvis Costello's house and punch him in the fucking face. No, just no. I mean, again, what is Watching the Detectives all about? How does that? Dum 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 boom 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 boom. No, we'll just get rid of that bass line. Everybody knows from that. So we'll just get rid of that entirely. Okay, so what are we left with? Okay, nothing.
I wouldn't have, I don't want to interrupt, but I wouldn't have known this was Watching the Detectives until, Simon started to sing and I recognized the lyrics and I went, but I had to step back for a second.
It can't interpret
the Detectives.
It can't interpret Elvis Costello's acidic lyrics at all.
No.
It's an easy listening version of Elvis Costello. It's like UB40 for reggae. This is for Elvis Costello. Easy listening pap. Just absolute nonsense. And again, where is the bass? I don't understand it. I mean, that is 3 out of 4 tracks where I think this is a song famous for the bass line and you're not using any bass on it. Or if you are, it's buried so in the mix that nobody can hear it.
Well, what was John Taylor doing during this record?
As we know, about to quit the band, so
probably because he wasn't on it. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's in there somewhere, but I can't hear him.
Lily Delay. I mean, it's the same kind of complaints that you can make. I mean, nobody's ever said, "Oh, Lily Delay is a really nice romantic song. I just wish there was trip hop beats on it." Nobody's ever thought that. So they had some trip hop. I mean, Jesus wept. Vocally,
just wept.
It does nothing. I mean, again, Dylan technically is not a great singer, but he's a great communicator. So Simon here sounds like a kid singing at a birthday party or something, where it's just there's no connection. This is like a pub band covering a song. It's just, it's like a covers band that you'd see on a Saturday night, and go, "Oh, that's okay. I like that."
I don't
song."
even think that. Sounds like no cover band I've ever heard.
Well, not a good one. I mean more like a bad wedding band rather than a
Right.
good pub band that would have the place rocking.
Mhm.
We're not talking pub rock here. We're talking anemic party bands who would play at your sister's wedding, and you'd never want to see them again, or your sister for that matter, for hiring them in the first place.
Yeah.
But then we come halfway through the album to the real elephant in the room that everybody makes fun of when you mention this album. The whitest of white bands ever, Duran Duran, thought it would be a good idea to cover Public Enemy, and specifically to cover 911 is a Joke, a song about how tough it is growing up in an American city where having a certain color of face means that the emergency services won't respond to your calls, but they'll go to someone with a lighter face, no problem whatsoever. Can I suggest that a bunch of guys from the Midlands in England probably shouldn't be singing that kind of thing? I don't know. There's an element of it that could come off as solidarity. Well, we're sympathizing, we're empathizing with their scenario.
Yeah.
But then it completely undercuts the whole notion of the album. I thought it was about your influences, guys. That's what you've been saying in the interviews. This song came out in 1990. So Duran Duran were already, I mean, what album came out? Liberty came out around 1990.
Yeah, but they were already passe by then.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So how was this an inspiration for the young, plucky Duran Duran when Liberty was them already over the hills and far away? Absolutely not. And taking 911 as a joke, which is Flavor Flav's probably his most famous song with Public Enemy, they obviously decided, well, we can't do that because, again, I'd need to rap and I can't rap at all. So what should we do? Oh, why don't we turn it into a kind of bluesy Beck song? What? So it sounds like something off of Odelay by Beck.
Well, we're not that far away from that, so.
Which is fine. I love Beck.
Oh, well, yeah. Odelay's brilliant.
I don't translate Beck into Public Enemy's stratosphere, at all. It's just a bizarre pick. And subsequently, when this has been mentioned, the band have said that they put this on and a couple of tracks on as a joke to kind of get publicity. And you think, I mean, what's the old adage? No publicity is bad publicity. No, that's not true. If you become a laughing stock, then it takes a long time to recover from that. And they've never had a real crossover hit again. So I think they're really wrong to have done that in the first place. I mean, they've had albums that have sold better again, but in a very reduced marketplace.
Right.
So, they've never had another Ordinary World, for example, regardless of how good their records have been. In fact, the one from last year, was it 2 years ago now?
I think you're right. I think it was like a year ago.
Yeah.
Last summer.
That was a solid enough record, So, I think they sabotaged their own career well before it needed to end commercially, but they still play big places. So
what do you think? This is kind of going on a tangent, but do you think when Ordinary World came out, that was like a welcome return back to the Duran Duran of before? Because it is I think the production on it's fine. To me, it sounds like Duran Duran that I know and love. And I suppose it was a welcome return, but it was a big hit in the States. I will give you that.
It was the number one record here as well. I mean, it was everywhere, and I won't cry for you. It's a good song. It's well produced comparatively. And it gave them a big anthem again, which is what they needed. Right. It didn't have much in the way of balls or testosterone, but it was that kind of where bands were coming back or acts were coming back, and if they did come back with a more ballady type approach, who's the best example? Meatloaf. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Perfect example. Yeah. Doesn't come back with a banger, it comes back with a ballad. So that was a good move from them. It kind of reminded people, oh well, we'll quite like Duran Duran. The wedding album did really well off the back of it, despite I think being overrated in general. I mean, it's solid, but it's not a great record.
Right.
But that's a great single, and it gave them. Speaking of which, it gave them Success, which is our next track, Iggy Pop's Success. And this is another example of they cannot do, and Simon particularly cannot do irony. So him trying to communicate the irony of Iggy Pop's and the satire of Iggy Pop's success into this just doesn't work at all. I mean, David Bowie wrote that song with Ricky Gardner. So it's a parody, it's a pastiche of Fame, just like literally Fame by David Bowie. But you don't get that from this at all. It's played completely straight. It's lacking in awareness. It's got no guile about it at all. It loses that kind of druggy Stones feel from the Lust for Life version by Iggy entirely, and just goes back to that middle of the road, compressed Warren Cucurullo bullshit that has just infested Duran Duran on this record. Absolutely infested them. Where everything is just flowing into the next note. Nothing stands out, nothing stabs, nothing perks you up, nothing stands alone. There's no solos. Everything is just mushed and compressed.
Yeah.
It sounds like we've all got that friend who has, I've got 28 million records on my phone, and you think, yeah, and let me hear one. And it's, because they've got such low bit rate. That's what this whole record kind of sounds like. Like there's such a low bit rate that you can't hear the bass, and the guitars are just compressed all over the place. But it's there on the record. It's not because it's because it's us doing it, not it's them. Crystal Ship by The Doors. I mean, from that debut record.
I would think Simon could pull that off, technically,
From a vocal point of view, yeah, again, it's about the communication aspect. He's not Jim Morrison.
Well,
Because sometimes, Leonard Cohen, perfect example, not a great singer, but a communicator of his own works. Simon Le Bon, not a good translator of other people's works. So we get Crystal Ships, which, again, it probably is one of the best things on the records, but that's not saying anything. It takes that hypnotic and kind of crooner Jim Morrison and just turns it into another rock song. I think if they'd have just done it maybe with Simon and piano and nothing else, probably would have worked a lot better. Probably would have worked.
It could have worked. It wouldn't have fit in with the rest of the record, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, if this whole thing should have been much more... I mean, not that this is a great record, but much more like, what's it called? Stripped by the Rolling Stones that they did around this period, which was basically them doing a more kind of MTV Unplugged type of...
Well, it's kind of like Everything But the Girl in that acoustic. Well, in the UK, they put out the acoustic EP, but in the States, they compiled everything into a actual, album. And I think that record's absolutely brilliant. Everything's very stripped down. If Duran Duran could have approached it more like that, or like what the Stones did, I think it might have worked better. This is just really an overproduced mess, is what it really is.
And there's a good example, Everything But the Girl, in 97, 98, would have a massive hit again with Miss You, was that what it's called?
Yeah.
And I miss you like the deserts miss the
rain. Great track.
And they were able to update their sound without sounding like they were just being derivative. Which this record just shows that Duran Duran do not have that capability at all. They cannot fit into anything that isn't just in their own wheelhouse. I mean, Ball of Temptation is an insult as well. I mean, 911 as a joke is obviously funnier because it's literally a hip hop song, but this is the same kind of thing, where here they are singing the Temptations, and not just any old Temptations song, a real protest song from the Temptations with a wonderful Eddie Kendrick vocal, all about the state of affairs in America in 1970. So right in the middle of the Vietnam War, right in the middle of all those assassinations, Malcolm X, Bobby Kennedy, blah, blah, blah. Richard Nixon's won the election, blah, blah, blah. So Duran Duran sing about segregation, determination, demonstration, integration, aggravation, humiliation, obligation to our nation. Well, it's not your nation. And again, maybe you're trying to, well, we're just in solidarity with our brothers across the pond. But again, it just comes across as a bunch of white guys who go, "Oh, I like that beat. Yeah, let's cover that." Oh, you could sing that, Simon, because it doesn't sound like they believe a single note that's been played, and he doesn't sound like he's believing his own BS. The only good redeeming thing about this is that John found his bass, because Ball of Confusion has some good bass lines on it.
About time.
But one of the most memorable things about Ball of Confusion, the original by the Temptations, is that wonderful, I think it's Paul Williams who does, not that Paul Williams, but
not that one, the other one.
Not the Rainbow Connection, but the Paul Williams from the Temptations, who does, he sings and the band played on, in this really baritone voice. And that line in the song is to say all this crap's going on, but the band play on, so it never ends. Nobody stops. The band just play on. Nothing ever changes, kind of thing. And Duran Duran take that out entirely. It's one of those memorable things. It would be like taking out the wah from War if you're going to cover Edwin Starr. Why would you do that? It's just ridiculous. We come to the title track, Thank You by Led Zepp. Now, Led Zepp, I think it's fair to say, even amongst Led Zepp fans, it's generally agreed that at their worst, they could be a bit self-indulgent and extend tracks way beyond the length that it should be played for. 4-hour versions of Gallows Pole.
Take your pick.
Yeah, to the point where it was they were just trying to one-up each other, right? He got a 15-minute solo, so I want a 16-minute, that kind of nonsense.
But it was of the time. I mean, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Cream were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So you'd buy a live record and there'd be one track on it. But, I mean, here we have a Led Zepp cover. So covering an indulgent band and somehow making their version longer. The Led Zepp version is 4 minutes. This is 6 minutes, nearly 7. What? I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't see any reason why this needs to be 7 minutes.
I don't either.
I mean, if you have to cover Led Zeppelin, and you don't have to do this at all, but you do have to be prepared to be compared to them. What they do here is just add some effects. They turn the backing vocals way up in the mix and put Simon way down in the mix to try and disguise the fact that Simon's not going to be hitting any Robert Plant notes anytime soon. No. Again, this could have been something low-key, something acoustic, a reinterpretation rather than just a cover. And God forbid, why is it 7 minutes? Why is it 7 minutes long? I mean, thank you. I mean, you're welcome, but could you wrap things up? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, the whole total length of this CD is 54 minutes, 26 seconds, too long.
Yeah.
They could have cut it down by 20 minutes. I would have been even happier.
And then we'll get Drive By.
Well, that's the only Duran Duran song on here. I mean, which they wrote it. It's a Duran Duran song. So,
but it's a prequel to the Chauffeur. It's the story sets up the Chauffeur. Mm-hmm. So even then, they're paying tribute to themselves. Which, if you do that with a sense of irony, that could be funny, and they could do something with that. Mm-hmm. Who's your greatest inspiration? Us. We inspire each other. You could do something with that. Zappa would have a field day with that kind of idea. But they don't. They just don't. I hate the spoken word transatlantic accent that he does on this.
I know.
Really,
I mean, it's
you know, Cary Grant, you are not Mr. LeBrain when it comes to doing this accent,
and it doesn't work in this context. Let's say you took that, put it on Rio, with that production, that time period. Maybe it might work. I'm not saying that it might not work, but it does not work in this context with this production. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't. And if you are going to have it, it should be where your record ends. Have it be a little spoken thing to end the record, fade it out, walking into the distance, and there's your end of the record. You don't reprise "I Want to Take You Higher" again, and they play it pretty much the same as they did the first time. But I do not need to hear Simon Le Bon singing "Boom shakalaka like a boom shakalaka like a boom shakalaka like a boom." That I do not need to hear that in my life. That is an embarrassment.
I don't think we need to hear that other than from Sly and the Family Stone. Just leave it there and just let it speak for itself. We don't need to reinterpret it.
By 95, that was a cliche because everybody was adding on boom shakalakalakas. It was what is this? So that's where the album ends. But then you have a couple of bonus tracks that have been on different things, and they just do the exact same thing.
I haven't heard those because I've just got the regular.
So one of them is another 6-minute track, and it's Diamond Dogs by Bowie.
Yeah.
And it's as bad as you can imagine. So Diamond Dogs I've always liked for being a bit kind of grungy almost. And don't mean literal grunge, but I mean in its approach. It doesn't just do Ziggy again. It's got a very dirty approach. Where this doesn't. It's very safe. It's a sing-along version. It's the karaoke Diamond Dogs. And then they do Femme Fatale by the Velvet Underground and Nico, which was on the Wedding album. They just took the same track from the Wedding album that they've already covered and put it on the bonus tracks. I mean, if that doesn't tell you, they couldn't even be bothered to do something else. We've already done a cover. Just use that one from the last record.
Well, why couldn't they just put Needle in the Damage Done on there?
Yeah. And the worst thing about Femme Fatale is it makes it sound even more dated because it's from the earlier 90s. So it adds to that feel where it sounds more like John Waite or Mr. Mister. And that really corporate, sleeves rolled up. Just no. Just listen to Alex Chilton version if you want to hear a guy singing Nico's lyrics or Nico's parts of Femme Fatale. And then, as you said there, the UK single had a B-side, which is a cover of someone who I'm rather fond of, Needle and Damage Done, from Neil Young's Harvest. And for the first 2 minutes, it's a very straight cover. There's nothing changed at all. Almost quite embarrassingly similar because he's trying his best to do an impression, like he's Jimmy Fallon or something, trying to do his best Neil Young impression.
That's fair.
And it's atrocious because then it adds on. It's as if they said, well, we can't just copy it, we better do something. Wait a minute. Harvest had an orchestra on a couple of tracks, didn't it? Yeah, it did, you're right. We should get an orchestra on Needle and the Damage Done. Yeah, it's a good idea. They just throw an orchestra in there for no reason whatsoever, which completely kills the mood of Needle and the Damage Done, which again is a very, like a lot of these tracks, is a very personal song by the person who wrote it. I mean, that's about Danny Whitten from Crazy Horse and the overdose and Neil's guilt about it. So for them to just turn it into this sounds good, we'll cover this. It just adds to the whole feel of almost exploitation that the album's been going for, of appropriation in terms of the African American acts that they've tried to white explain to, and in other cases just completely misguided choices and bizarre choices in terms of who you're paying tribute to. And again, the one that stands out to me as being you should absolutely be paying tribute to them is Roxy. Where Roxy? Yeah, that
God knows Simon could pull that off.
Yeah, but it's as if they said, no, they're not cool. We can't do that. Do Public Enemy. That'll get the kids in.
I must say, I must refer to this though. Ivan said Duran Duran has many other good records. Talk about them must be positive. Well, but we like Duran Duran, Ivan. I just want to put this out there. Don't think that we're just trying to slam them just to slam them.
Well,
this whole show's just based on
the name of the show. Yeah,
total shite. We're looking at the best, the worst of the worst from the best of the best, And Duran Duran has put out some great stuff. So you'll probably see some more Duran Duran down the road, but this is not a good one. But Ivan did say one positive thing about the album is the cover art. I like that.
I don't mind it as a bit of competition, but even then, some of the choices. I mean, that Dylan picture, he looks like he's in pain listening to this bloody record. To be honest, just I don't know. No. I don't mind it as, I suppose, but no.
It's just a poorly executed concept. It could have been great, I think, but I don't think it was ever necessary. No one was looking for something like this. You know what I mean?
Do you know what it sounds like? To me, it sounds like in the 2000s when everybody started having box sets, this would be like disc 3, where they've rounded up a whole bunch of covers that they've done as random B-sides and just thrown them on a disc and called it thank you. But no, they actually have just made an album of it. Whereas this sounds like a fan club rarities disc or something. It's no wonder that they've never had a commercial success after this. For me, it just kills all credibility. You don't come back from this. Just like The Clash didn't come back, just like Boston didn't come back. It's a kind of recurring theme. The ones that we've hit on this series are career killers, absolute career killers. You might have commercial success in terms of audiences, because Duran Duran are still a major act when it comes to touring and whatnot. You'll sell some records to your old fan base, but you're never going to have that crossover again. They were never going to have another Ordinary World. You were never going to have another wedding album.
They did do. I don't know. I'm going to ask you about this. Medeza Land, that came out in 1997, had the song Electric Barbarella. Now, I remember in the States that got some airplay. And in fact, I kind of dug Electric Barbarella. What did that do over in the UK?
Nothing.
It didn't do anything.
No, and the album didn't chart at all.
Oh, okay.
So just like I said at the start, the people that say that, but this went gold, well, covers albums are a cheap hit. That's why people do them, because they're easy. And sometimes you can just get away with them. Oh, look, one of my favorite bands is doing some songs that I know, I'll buy that. And they were coming off a successful album, so you have residual goodwill from that. But then it really shows up by the time of the next album, because the sales go with that. So it kind of proves that they've run off their own audience here, and they haven't cultivated any new fans here. None of the fans of the artists of these songs would be brought over. Duran Duran fans clearly weren't satisfied. The band kind of tried to act as if it was a bit of a joke. It's a rather self-sabotaging joke if it was. And I don't get the point. Again, especially in 95. If they'd have done this, and I didn't say the 2000s, they didn't have any ideas and commercial success. They just wanted a nice, easy, hit. I could see the point of doing a covers album about then. That's why people do Christmas records. It's an easy one. It's a nice, easy hit. But in 1995, when they're still relatively young, they could absolutely have tried to do something mainstream, commercial, and still very much Duran Duran. I mean, the Human League, there's another one. They came back in Britpop and had a massive success with Tell Me When Will I See You Again.
Was that like on Octopus?
Yeah, and that was 95.
Okay, yeah.
So same year. So here we have other bands, and I mentioned OMD, and we've mentioned Everything But the Girl, from this era that Duran come from, who absolutely translate into the Britpop era, but Duran Duran aren't even trying. Not even trying. It's just an embarrassment, really. I think it just sounds horrendous in every possible way. I don't think even if it was played well, you can get away with these song choices. And I think the playing itself, even if the songs were good, on paper, would kill it anyway. So if every which way you look at it is doomed from the outset. and I have no idea what anybody involved was thinking, to be honest. There's no redeeming qualities for me in this.
No, I would avoid it if you can. I avoided it my whole life until we did this show.
Yeah, no, I think there's a reason for that. There's a reason why covers albums are easy to do but very difficult to get right. And they just, I want to say that I admire the chutzpah of actually doing some of these songs, but at the same time, you just think, no, you thought you could get away with it here and maybe try and get some hip hop fans into Duran Duran. That was never going to happen. That was just never going to happen the way they were trying to do some of these songs. It's the whitest of white bread albums. It really is. And it just is. I don't understand it. And the band themselves couldn't explain it to each other, and that's why John left, because they were all having falling outs. And I think calls were being made to see if they could get Robert Palmer back and do Power Station 2 or something, but hey, Power Station were.
I don't know. You'd have to get Andy Taylor back, and I don't know if he'd be.
But this makes Power Station seem really good.
Didn't they do something now? I swear to God that they did record something. They might have done something. And Andy Taylor came back. Please, in the comments, please let me know if I'm totally. I swear to God, I've read something about that, but I could be wrong.
But yeah, just nothing.
Human League, and then the conversation ends. Well, yeah, Future Past got good reviews.
Yeah, as we said,
finally, it took them 1,000 years. It's still no Rio, kids. Still no Seven in the. It's not the Tiger album. I'm just going to leave it at that.
And I don't know. Maybe it's what were Duran Duran? What was their sound going to be like translated into the 90s? A more guitar or heavy era, especially in Britpop.
Think about it, Davey. Think about the original sound, though. Andy Taylor's guitar sound was right up there. It was crunchy. I mean, he brought that rock element in. I know they've got Warren here, which it can do it. But you know what? I think there was something about the chemistry in the band. It was those 5 guys, and those 5 guys specifically. Whether Andy Taylor was not happy with the he quit. He wasn't happy, but there was something about it. I don't know. Maybe it was just a moment in time. They captured lightning in a bottle. I don't know, but it's not here. Do not look to this record, hopefully, and thinking that you'll find it, because you won't.
I mean, we've mentioned the band there, like OMD, like the Human League, who did find a way to resurrect their careers in this period. But I just don't know what Duran Duran's approach would be, because they were an image-based band who had better musicians than their posters would suggest, if that makes sense. Because some people were writing them off as just they're just a boy band basically. But no, they had good musicians. Right. They were solid. Simon was, I'm not a massive Simon the Bond fan, but he was an interesting singer. Live, he can be absolutely atrocious with some of the worst pitch you've ever heard in your life, as we all know from Live Aid. But on record, he can be interesting and powerful. Yeah. And you just don't get any sense of that here. Just nothing that made them good in the first place is given a chance to even slightly be on display here. They didn't pick anything sympathetic to them to give them a chance. What they could have done is maybe found some real obscurities and just gone down the route of these are songs that deserve to be better known, but people won't be comparing them every 2 seconds. Whereas here, just every single track you go, not as good as original, not as good as original, really not as good as, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it's kind of like REM when they did their covers, for the most part, they picked obscure songs.
Yeah.
And no one would know any better. Not that I'm sure most of the REM covers I've heard I really enjoy, because they don't massacre. It's not like a massacre. It's they're. I don't want to say that they're faithful to the originals, but they do put their own spin on it. This is just like a total reworking into something you don't recognize. That's all.
Yeah, it's a half-remembered melody that is just completely lost all that made it what it was in the first place. The bass parts that just disappear. And yeah, well, nearly every artist. Well, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing it.
That's why we're doing it. Yeah.
Because if you just say everything's great, then you're not really praising anything, are you? So we have to shine a light on other things too. So what makes Duran Duran great is what makes them absolutely abysmal at the same time, as we're seeing here. They just have nothing to add to these songs. And yeah, every single band can make a bad album, but it's up to the band to say, this didn't work, let's try something, let's not release that quite yet. Let's see what we can work on. There's no way they could have been listening to this back in the studio at Capitol and saying, great stuff, guys.
Hey, this is snazzy. This has really got a great beat.
Nailed it. This will solve the racial tensions in Compton. No chance.
This will bring people together, this record.
It's nothing. It's just bizarre. And again, we know that the factions within the band had always been a little bit, argumentative to say the least. Hence the big split in the 80s with the two different bands. And you can really sense that here, that you're just getting kind of, nobody's getting satisfied here, and it's just a very safe middle of the road choice. But ultimately that means that it doesn't satisfy anybody at all. There's no adventure being taken here. There's no interesting notions. Just nothing.
Well, you can't go wrong, Ivan, with Rio. So there you go. Well, neither Davey or I are going to recommend this. So I'm not even going to ask the rating. That don't think I could even rate it. So.
No, I don't think we need to rate these ones because the name of the show tells its story. Sometimes these things have redeeming features. We've found a few decent tracks on our journey. Not on this, not on Boston, but a couple of things on the Clash, But
the Boston was Boston. The episode we did on Boston was just horrible. And the funny thing is that we had some people were like, "Oh my God, you guys are totally wrong. This is a great record."
That's fine.
But you're going to get Duran Duran people, hardcore Duran fans that are going to look at this and go, "Well, you guys are totally off."
Yeah, I looked at the comments just to see what the fan response is for these songs, and yeah, every single one of these, if you look at any YouTube video, better than the original. Oh my God, I'm a massive Zeppelin fan, but this completely destroys the Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
What? Because the people that are clicking on these videos in the first place are doing so because they're fans of it.
Right.
However few there are. So, it's the minority that can shout the loudest, really. It's nothing to really worry about. And it doesn't make them wrong, obviously. It doesn't make us right. But what it does make us is having to listen to this absolute shite. As we've mentioned before we go on air, before we went on air, there's a never-ending supply. So
this series could go on for years because there's always, think about it. Duran Duran's a great band. I love the 80s stuff. Okay. I love it. But this is just such a disappointment of the greatness that had taken place before, That's all. I love Duran Duran. I'm just disappointed by this.
And I wonder why. In general, I do wonder why a covers record. Just in general. Never mind these songs specifically. Just the idea of doing a covers record right now, following a platinum record. Why do that?
There you go. DJ D. It's called blind loyalty. Yep. That's what it is.
Diminishing returns though, because again the sales go at that. So they might have the loyalty, but from an increasingly diminishing amount of listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would never recover commercially in terms of having an absolute smash again.
No, if you look at their catalog, I mean, you know, a lot of the records right after this, 2-star, 3, there was no glowing reviews.
Mm,
Probably the best reviewed thing is the latest record.
yeah, which again, solid records.
Mhm.
But that's a mature band knowing what they are, and
Exactly.
this sounds like a middle-aged in terms of music. I don't mean middle-aged men at the time because they weren't that old, but
Right.
middle-aged in terms of music certainly, not knowing how to fit in, because Britpop was an era where it was all about the writing again, and songs and individuality, and they just had no identity. And I think
That's not the type of band they were, you know?
yeah, they weren't a craft band. They were
Mhm.
a groove band, a feel band.
Yeah.
They,
Dance-oriented band, pretty much.
and they could have leaned into that. There's plenty of great dance music being made in the mid-90s, absolutely millions of it.
Hmm.
But then they obviously thought we needed to hear them covering Public Enemy instead. Whereas I'm sure there's some great stuff that the guys could have come up with if they just let them be musicians instead of whatever the hell this is.
I don't know. More of like a computer program, I think.
Yeah, I think this might have been the first AI produced album. Make Me Duran Duran covers album. Incorporate Public Enemy.
Speaking of AI, I should mention this. This might be going on a tangent, but we got a couple minutes left. On one of the radio stations, local stations, they played a track off the Barbie soundtrack, okay,
Mm-hmm.
which is Johnny Cash singing the Barbie song. And it was absolutely scary. It was scary good. It was scary good.
Is Barbie song is Barbie Ghetto? Is that song?
No, it wasn't that song. It was to the tune of, I can't remember now. Like it was like to a Johnny Cash song, but it was Barbie lyrics, and it was scary, scary how good it was. And it just makes me think about what is down the road as far as AI in music, and it just was scary.
Well, we're seeing the actors walking out over this because they are signing contracts that allows their likenesses to be used in perpetuity, I should say, for movies. So after their deaths, their likenesses can be used, and which would therefore mean we don't need new actors. Hey, we can bring back Marlon Brando and James Dean. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
No, it would be absolutely terrifying.
It's terrifying. Yeah.
So we are getting these novelties at the moment of people going, oh look, I've imagined what Freddie Mercury covering the Spice Girls would sound like, and AI's worked it out for me. And I think, who gives a flying fuck?
Speaking of Arcadia, this is a great record. This is like the last true great Duran Duran album. I put this in that Duran Duran genre.
I'm much more on the Power Station side.
I like Power Station too, but the songwriting, this is another show though.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind covering Arcadia and those offshoot projects. There's a show right there.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the drums on Power Station are
Tony Thompson, but they're crazy.
I mean, Tony's a great drummer, obviously, but geez Louise, some of the stuff that's done on that is just so overproduced. It's so of its time.
Yeah.
But I love Robert Palmer. Absolutely love him as a singer.
Yeah.
And there's an example. His last record was called Drive. I think it was called. Came out in 2003, and that was a blues record. And it was Robert Palmer doing his kind of thing with no concessions. And if people didn't like it, if they wanted to hear Addicted to Love, go back and listen to that. I want to do what was he doing, like Mama Talk to Your Daughter and stuff. He was doing that. And that was just the sound of one guy who had a vision. And if people didn't like it, that's fine. This album sounds like nobody has a vision. Nobody has a concept. Nobody has an idea. A vague notion of we're saying thank you to these artists that inspired us. But as we've said, even that is completely undercut by the fact that one of these tracks came out after Duran Duran had already had the massive peaks. So how could that possibly have inspired their growing up and their career? It just makes no sense.
No.
So I just.
All right, Davey. Well, we hit an hour. Let's wrap this dog up. Yeah, don't. Hey, if you want to listen to this just to see what it sounds like, I wouldn't spend any money on it like I did. Just go listen to it and leave a comment what you think. If you haven't heard it, we'd love to hear more about it.
Get it lined up. Have two browsers open, one with the original version, one with the Duran Duran, and just in every single case, if you like the Duran Duran and you don't know the original, say you don't know the Grandmaster Flash song, listen to that afterwards and go, yeah, that's not as good. Because none of these hold up. I don't think there's a redeeming song on this. Not one.
No, I would agree.
There's just varying degrees of. I suppose that's not awful, but yeah, that's bad.
All right, kids, we've just completed yet another That's Total Shite show. There are more down in the. I don't know if I have these on. I think I do have them in the playlist. There's more. Davey and I have covered some other albums. There will be more albums in the future. Lord knows, but it's always a fun discussion. It's always great to have Davey on the channel, and I don't know. Look for more content. There's plenty more things, and make sure you check out Davey's channel too. His link's down below, and subscribe. Check his content out. Got a lot of great content. We got a lot of great content. So check it out. So anything else coming up real quick before we go that I haven't had anybody promote anything in a long time. Is there anything since we're live? Anything coming up?
You and I will be together next week on the Contrarians, I think, doing Pub Rock.
Pub Rock. Yeah. I'm hosting that one.
Looking forward to that.
That'll be good.
Because we'll have three very different approaches. I haven't spoken to them about it, but I think I love pub rock. I think Martin, who's on it, hates pub rock in general.
It's going to be interesting.
Peter Kerr comes from Australia, who have a completely different pub rock scene. So that should be a rather good episode.
What about Monster Den? Anything coming up on Monster Den for you?
Yes, tomorrow on the Monsters Den we are doing because it's apparently this is a thing in America, Shark Week. This is a thing.
Yes. Discovery Channel, yes.
We are doing bad shark movies tomorrow. So we each pick a shark movie that we haven't seen, and we're covering them tomorrow. So awful shark movies tomorrow on the Monsters Den.
There you go. So stay tuned. More Davy Gallagher. Stay tuned. All right, David, let's wrap it up. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Please leave a thumbs up because you know what that does. Helps everything. The algorithm loves it. So anyway, stay tuned. There's more coming up. Tomorrow, just want to promote it. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we are doing a Contrarians live chat. The topic, our favorite album, back album. How do I want to say it? It's such a weird way to say it. The back side of the album, not the front of the cover, but the back are your favorite covers. We're just trying to keep it
the arse of the record.
The arse of the record. But we're just keeping it loose on these live chats. Hopefully you can come by and spend some time and check it out. But Martin will be on, and who else? I can't remember. But Martin and I'll be there. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, we're done. What you got? What's this? Like that. See, there's the backside. It's cool.
The backside of Cud's Rich and Strange, 1993. Cud. If people haven't heard this record, Rich and Strange by CUD. Cud. Check this out.
I've never even heard of it.
Much better than Duran Duran were doing in the mid-90s. CUD. Cud.
Cool. All right. Album back cover. That's a. Words are hard, DJD. Words are hard. Yeah. All right. We'll see you. All right. Take care, everybody.